Good evening. Welcome to the World Universities Summit. I'm very happy to report we have been having wonderful 2 days, and I'm grateful to Jindal Global Center of G20 Studies and the International Institute for Higher Education for actually organizing this World Education Summit. Today's panel discussion is going to revolve around future of work, placements, and internships in a world emerging from the pandemic. I'm also very happy to have two distinguished speakers whom I intend to spend next 40-50 minutes talking interesting questions, and I'm really looking forward to your responses. Let me briefly introduce. We have today speaker one, Professor Dr. Peter Kilpatrick, who is serving as the president from the Catholic University of America. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you.
We also have Professor Dr. Lynn Pasquerella, President, American Association of Colleges and Universities. We have Professor Chang, who's just joined us, who's a professor from Institute of Business, Timor-Leste. Welcome, Professor. Let me set the context immediately right. Why is this thematic session so important and so relevant? I will just quickly share my screen. I hope my screen is visible to all of you.
Yes.
Is it visible?
Yes, I can see.
So basically, when I chose this session to moderate, I had, I thought that absolutely education is changing, but I think the workplace is also changing. How and what we think about placements and internships is absolutely and dramatically changed during the pandemic. I have only 3 slides, but I thought it would be nice to set the context in place. During pandemic, there has been a significant or a paradigm shift in the workplace. What is that paradigm shift we are talking about? More and more employees at the workplace want flexibility. We are talking about both hybrid and remote work. I think last 6 to 8 months, India itself has been spending many hours, writing contracts on a concept called moonlighting. We also have huge companies, shifting from, not so technology to an increased reliance on technology. The dependence on technology by many companies have significantly increased, pre-COVID and post-COVID. One more interesting fact that I did find out through my research is now the companies and employees are moving towards result-oriented approach as opposed to people-oriented approach. Gone are those days where companies are asking the HR personals to create policies pertaining to people. I think now the policies and everything pertaining in the corporation or industry setup is focused more on result-oriented approach. I think this has been the paradigm shift. If we just move forward, but the attitude of the employees during this pre-COVID, post-COVID is also going through a significant change. We are looking at employees who are emphasizing more on work-life balance, and they're also quietly quitting if that balance is not available to them. The second is there is huge productivity pay gap. According to the study, which I am referring to, which is conducted by the Economic Policy Institute, if you see from 79 to 2020, the net productivity of the employees has rose by 61.8%, but the pay of the typical workers has grown far slower. It has increased only by 17.5%. There is a gap. There is a gap between productivity and pay. And I think this is also a very significant factor now going forward for the companies and organizations. The last is there has emerged huge mental health and well-being issues in the workplace. So at one side, the companies and organizations are looking for, result-oriented approach. On the other side, they're looking at productivity gap. On one side, we are looking at flexibility. The other side, we are looking at work-life balance. So I think this is the best time to be here and to discuss on this topic. I would stop here and, and I'll stop sharing my screen. We will now quickly go into hearing the opening remarks from the three distinguished speakers we have. And let me quickly invite Professor Peter. Professor Peter, I would really want to give your opening remarks on the future of work, placements, and internships in a world emerging from the pandemic.
Great. Thank you, Padmanabha. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm grateful to Global Jindal University for the opportunity to participate in this important panel discussion. So just a little bit about myself and my university so that you understand the context. I'm Peter Kilpatrick. I'm a 40-year professor of engineering. So I believe I understand the technology landscape as it's developed and evolved over those 40 years. I'm here at the Catholic University of America, which is the only pontifical university in the United States, founded by the Holy Father and the bishops in 1887. And I would say that there are three important goals of a Catholic education, and they're very relevant to our discussion today about the future of work. Number one, we want to help our students fully understand and delve into who are they as human persons? What makes them tick? Why are they here? What is their purpose in life? And I think this is really important because it relates to how they relate to other people in the workplace. Our second goal is to help our students completely get in touch with their fundamental belief system and to integrate that belief system with the way they use their intellects. And this is really important because otherwise people will not be integral. They won't integrate their belief system and their reason. And then the third thing, and it's probably most important, is to contextualize all of our learnings in the university. Skills are for vocational training. Education is about a full understanding of the importance, philosophically, logically, historically, linguistically, socially, of any practical knowledge that you learn in the university. And why is this relevant to our discussion today? So the conversation is all about how has technology impacted the workplace? How has it impacted productivity? How has it impacted the future of work? And I would make the argument, and I heard this actually from John Kelly, who was the senior vice president at IBM at the time, speaking about cognitive computing. And he said, computers can never replace what human persons do, but human persons have to understand how to fully integrate their talents with the technologies that they use. So a computer can never ask the right question. Only human persons can ask the right question. And so we have to be contextualized enough in our learning that we know how to ask those proper questions. We know how to program the computer properly, and we know how to do our work in a way that impacts society in the best possible way that it can do so. So I'm thrilled to be here. One of the things I would say about the mental health challenges we're seeing is it's partially a product of social isolation. And so we really have to learn how to communicate well in a virtual environment. We have to learn how to show emotion and sentiment. We have to learn how to relate to people in a virtual environment. And this is challenging. It's challenging for our young people. It's challenging for our old people, but we have to learn how to do it well if the hybrid environment is really going to be the workplace of the future. So thank you for the opportunity to share some opening remarks.
Thank you, Peter. I absolutely align to what I think you set the context absolutely right. May I now invite Professor Lynn to share your opening remarks, please.
Thank you so much. It really is an honor and privilege to be here with you, and thrilled to be on this panel with Peter. At AAC&U, our mission is to advance the democratic purposes of higher education by promoting equity, innovation, and excellence in liberal education. We represent about 1,000 colleges and universities across the country and in 27 different nations. And our overarching goal is to position students for success in work, citizenship, and life. We, in the United States, are under heavy criticism. There's been a dramatic decline in public trust in higher education. And we're seeing that a bit globally as well, where people are calling into question the value of a college degree and whether we are teaching students 21st century skills that will enable them to thrive. And we know that businesses and industries are now conferring credentials, they're conferring badges and certificates, and so people are questioning why they should come to college. This was an impetus for AAC&U to engage in a series of employer surveys, asking what employers were most looking for from college graduates and whether we were, as institutions of higher education, filling their needs. And so we've been doing these surveys since 2007. Our latest round of employer surveys took place right after the start of the pandemic in 2020 and showed that the skills and competencies that employers are most seeking are those that one would expect: critical thinking skills, information literacy, the capacity to work in diverse teams, to engage in ethical decision-making. But what was interesting about this latest survey is it showed that employers care as much about the dispositions and mindsets of graduates as they do about those skills and competencies. They want employees who are adaptable and flexible in the face of rapid change, where rapidly changing technology means rapid obsolescence. They want individuals who are resilient. And so this is something we haven't focused on very much in higher education: mindsets and dispositions, in addition to skills and competencies. The reason why I think this panel is so important is because I just returned from a conference at Arizona State University, where we were talking about, it was the Coalition for Life Transformative Education, and looking at some daunting statistics. 85% of students claim that they go to college to get a better job. But 95% of those students say that they're not just looking for a job, they're looking for meaningful work, what Peter referred to as that sense of purpose. But only 34% say that they're deeply interested in the work that they're doing, and only 40% say that they have a meaningful career. And so when we look at the data on how people find meaningful work, what's most satisfying to them, not only upon graduation, but 10, 20, 30 years down the line, we know from a series of studies by Gallup, Gallup produced studies, and now more recently, the studies that Gallup did with Bates College in their Center for Purposeful Work, that what makes the difference are two things. One is having experiential learning, engaging in internship, applied learning opportunities where students can apply their knowledge and skills to work that extends more than a semester, work that matters to both the student and to society. The second factor is having a mentor who cares about you, that sense that someone in my institution thinks about me, is willing to work with me both inside and outside of the classroom, that I matter to someone. And so we can think about the ways in which we need to change our institutional structures to allow faculty, staff, and peer mentors the opportunity to engage in this kind of long form work to prepare students, but also engage in that mentoring, which often goes unrecognized in tenure and promotion processes. So that's the backdrop with which I'm approaching our session today.
Thank you, Professor, and thank you for bringing in your experiences of the recent conferences and debates that you are actually engaged in. I think that experience will be of really useful for all the students who might be listening to this discussion. Let me now invite Professor Chang to please come and give your opening remarks.
First of all, greatly thankful for inviting me to providing this chance to share my ideas on the matter of future works. I'm currently working for IOB, which means the Institute of Business. It's a single university focused on business in the Timor-Leste. I have been working in the East Timor since 2009. After the pandemic, I have some condition I changed through the online. I intended to teaching. This topic today is very futuristic. At the same time, even very relevant to East Timor as well. This is a global topic, even though East Timor is not directly influenced by AI or automation, but in the reality, influenced by some global factors. For example, the majority Timorese people, the working, biggest number of Timor people working as a foreign worker working in Korea, and then directly influenced by automation as well. And I also got a great impact from the pandemic, in particular, some industry in Korea, and also influenced to East Timor people. And in Korean case, some population drastically decreased, and then rural area greatly demanding many Timor people working in Korea as well. And then I also, by sharing today's topic on the future works, I'd like to learn from the other distinguished professors from overseas, and also wanted to share some cases, between the Timor-Leste and Korea as well. And I think while we discuss on it, we can find out a better sense of finding some reliable future works. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Chang. So we will now enter into the Q&A session. I would put the question, and I think all three of you can reflect for that question before we go on to the next question. Let's keep our responses short so that we can have more questions, and and we could probably give more responses to audience's question and answers also. The first question I have for all the three speakers is, geopolitically, the world is actually getting into crisis. What does that mean? We have the Russia and Ukraine war entering into 401st day. We have Sri Lankan economic crisis. We have the collapse of Silvergate Capital Corp and the SBB Financial Corp. SBB is of more of interest because I think they have lended the loans to the maximum number of unicorns. We have also had the UK rationing food supplies challenge in UK. So, consequentially, if you see, most of the major economics, or economies around the world is low growth rate zone. How you think universities can prepare students for not just entering, into, I would say, employment, but also how do they thrive in such challenging times and challenging world? The reason why this question is very contextual is, I think, it's people coming to university for education is one thing, but at the end of the day, they need to be placed. They have to get an internship. So I would first invite Professor Lynn to respond, and then we'll go with Peter and Professor Chai.
Yeah, it's such an important question. Our employer surveys showed that while the majority of employers thought that college graduates were well prepared to enter the workforce, they didn't see them as well prepared for advancement. And so this provides an opportunity for us to partner with business and industry to promote lifelong learning, so that a few years into a person's career, how can we partner with them to offer educational programs to provide them with the skills and competencies necessary to advance? Or how can we work with them at the front end so that they're prepared to take on the challenges that are unscripted and perhaps unpredictable in this rapidly changing world? We saw also from the employer survey that those students who had engaged in internships and apprenticeships were much more likely to be hired by employers who saw this as a valuable asset in preparation for the kind of advancement that would need to take place within business and industry.
So Padmanabha, I'll chip in here. I would argue that the world is no more or less chaotic than it's always been. If you look at the world wars of the 20th century, if you look at the Cold War, if you look at the strife that human beings seem to have the ability to inflict on themselves, I think we've always been a little bit in chaos. What I would say is the world is very complex and it's interconnected. And so it's very important that our students have the fundamentals that enable them to apply their learning to very diverse sets of contexts and circumstances. So I think logic and the ability to think philosophically and historically are actually very important. And yet many universities are divesting themselves of the humanities. And if ever we needed the humanities to help contextualize the learnings that we get in the sciences and the technologies and business, we need it now. So we encourage our students to be what I would call Renaissance people who learn multiple areas of knowledge and learn how to interconnect them so that they can deal with a complex world.
Thanks, Peter. Professor Chang?
Okay, first of all, that I'm fully agreed. We need a Renaissance style of multidimensional education. I fully agree. At the same time, we has been facing for a long time since the Industrial Revolution, always the new technology stealing the job. So this is a not unique case, but problem now there's a speed, and also the size of and speed are very drastically increased. So it's some part of as a job seekers to adapting the job market, we have a big problem. So I have the proposing the three part. First one is we need to focus on some truly human factors, which means AI cannot do. For example, according to the Open College, some survey, like some matter of creativity, critical thinking, and adaptability, communication, and collaboration, and leadership in specific and domain-specific expertise. So some element which can be distinguished from the AI or automation, we should not lose. So that's my first proposal. Second proposal is a project leadership education, which means we cannot delivering only knowledge and we cannot expect students finding the job because automation and AI speed is drastically increased. So the students need to be exposed to the real world. How? But we need to provide some structure. So one good practice structure is project management, which means I'm more focused on the relationship skill in the project leadership education. And then last one is because always a new technology threatening the old sector of a job position. At the same time, always providing the new opportunity for the innovation. So some more need to emphasizing how to be making the innovation ideas, how to challenge. So this is my three proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chang. I think you have absolutely and rightly led me to the next question. By speaking on skills. So my next question is going to be: has people in this, I would say, noble profession of education, have you seen that knowledge and skills expected of students has undergone a change since COVID-19? Let me throw certain, important reports and some findings here, right? We are talking about skills in terms of cognitive, social, emotional. These days are more important and relevant compared to what was more relevant and compared to 5 years back. If you see the World Economic Forum report 2021, they're talking about upskilling, they're talking about 21st century skills. They're also talking about skills like critical thinking, creativity. But I think the core skills that is actually making a difference today compared to humans and robots are creativity and social intelligence. So do you think that significant change is actually taking place? There is a shift that is happening in terms of knowledge and that skills, which are actually expected from students post-COVID. So first I would request Peter to respond, and then Professor Chang, and then I would want to hear from Lynn. Professor Peter.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely the pandemic has forced students, faculty, everyone really, the workforce, to have to be very resilient and adapt to a strange environment. we never saw an experience quite like the pandemic in our modern age, where we were all forced to go online and we were all forced to wear masks and to quarantine. And so the pandemic was a great stressor. And so the skills that it uncovered and attempted to forge were grit and resilience, adaptability, flexibility, executive functioning skills, time management, self-directed learning, written communication. Now, some people adapted well to that. Other persons really struggled with that. And this is the reason that stress-induced mental health challenges went through the roof. Here in the United States, I saw a recent report that 59% of teenage women had suicidal ideation at some point during the pandemic. So we've seen a dramatic stressor on our society. And the question is, how will we respond to this? And I think it's going to require educators to be much more sensitive, both in the online and in the in-person environment. So yes, the pandemic has required new skills of us. It's also created new challenges that are really unprecedented.
Professor Chang.
Yeah, okay. Then, I think I fully agree. Social intelligence is one of the very, very few, maybe a fundamental part of a human element, which is impossible to be substituted by the AI, which means AI can provide a better knowledge. AI can provide some, even with automation, skills. But AI is very difficult to do. Instead of a human, it cannot substitute humans' action. The function of judgment, human decide what is correct, what is wrong, and then what it can do. So we need to think about the fundamental premise of the modern legal system, that we allow human has a free will. Many people disagree as well, that maybe do not have a free will. But anyhow, we agree, based on the legal system, we agree human beings' actions based on their decision. So that we have a responsibility of action. We cannot say by stealing others, this is my accident. We cannot say so. So now, in terms of social intelligence matters, we need to more focus on action-based learning and action-based education, which means it will be only one area. Even AI provide a better the function of work, but all responsibility AI impossible to carry on. Human being need to carry on. So I fully agree, social intelligence. At the same time, I want to adding one more. Maybe we can make a very attractive AI or robot, which means maybe even some men and women like attracting some favor. But basically, human being has a better sense of delivering the emotion, happiness. So before we lost this some fundamental the privilege of a human, maybe we will lost as some not only lost the human being's character, but also lost the job as well. That's my comment.
Thank you, Professor Chang. May I now ask Professor Lynn? I think we heard a few observations on skills and intelligences. Professor Lynn, what about knowledge? Do you think that even acquiring knowledge has changed fundamentally post-COVID?
I think everything's changed post-COVID. COVID-19 was emblematic of the kinds of wicked problems and grand challenges that we are facing as a global community. And, we saw not only food and shelter insecurities of our students unveiled, but the expansiveness of the digital divide. But we also saw how a focus on narrow technical training in response to this public health crisis, the worst global pandemic in more than a century, is short-sighted, because none of the technical training was going to help physicians, nurses decide who should get the last ventilator, how to allocate these scarce resources. It wouldn't help those in communities where there was such polarization and partisanship to bridge those gaps, to speak across differences. And so these are the knowledge, these are the skills that we need to address the problems of the future. I think this gets back to institutional structures. All of this is going to require integrative learning. So we have to get out of our narrow disciplinary silos and look at the ways in which these grand challenges require us to solve them from multiple perspectives, not single perspectives. And yet our structures and our institutions mitigate against working collaboratively, providing students with integrative learning. So how can we redress this challenge? How can we work together? There's resistance among the disciplines themselves. There's resistance among faculty who measure their prestige in terms of their disciplinary fields, and in many cases, resistance among administrators who worry about costs. So I think if we're going to prepare students to thrive in a world in which future jobs haven't been created yet, and in which these kinds of challenges are going to continue to arise, then we have to restructure the academy in a fundamental way. And, you know, I was at a forum at Harvard University last night where Danielle Allen was talking about ChatGPT and the ways in which AI is shaping higher education. And she is very concerned, as we all were, about the fact that many of the jobs that we're preparing students for will not exist because robots will have taken them over. And so how do we look to the future? How do we prepare students for a future that we really can't predict? I suppose this has always been our job, but now it's becoming a bit more complex.
Thanks, Professor Lynn. I think, I'm so enjoying because you guys are actually leading me to the next question, which makes it more interesting. I agree, there's a lot of discussion around us on future of work. AI was there. We had IBM Watson as one of the earlier artificial intelligence lawyers, and there were a lot of more interesting things happening in AI. Even the Waka Bayachi, the first artificial intelligence driver. But now I think the discussion is becoming more and more interesting after what we have got, the ChatGPT. Now it is real, and it is coming and throwing up some really interesting challenges. What makes ChatGPT very unique? I was really looking at some interesting figures. The ChatGPT demonstrates or claims that in their own testing, they have received a model score 1410 on the SAT, 163 on LSAT, 298 score on the Uniform Bar Exam. The ChatGPT has cleared the Google engineering interview. The ChatGPT clears the US Law School exam. The ChatGPT even passes the MBA exam given by Wharton professor. So this is really becoming a challenge. Now, if this is serious and this is real, and it is going to become real, how are we going to make our graduates relevant in the industry? In what ways do you think universities need to bring a change in curriculum, pedagogy, assessment, to make sure that they still become relevant in what we call as the future of work? But because, as you rightly said, Professor Lynn, the jobs which we may be preparing them for, they may not even exist. Then we have to go through a fundamental change. So first, I would want to hear from you, Professor Lynn, and then I will ask Professor Peter, and then I will invite Professor Chang. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we have to stop asking students to answer questions for which we already know the answers. The questions represented on SATs, LSATs, and start asking them to address these unscripted problems of the future, engage them in problem-based learning that does look at these broad challenges from multiple perspectives, provide them with the kind of mentoring necessary to be adaptable and flexible. in the face of these challenges. And that's the only way forward. We have to fundamentally change the way that we deliver the curriculum. And perhaps along the way, recognizing the mental anxiety that they're feeling, engage in pedagogies of kindness. And let me just say one line about that. And that means assessing them in ways that allows them to demonstrate their proficiencies, their competencies over an extended period of time, and have artifacts of their accomplishments that they can show to employers, as opposed to high stakes testing, which is designed to engage in ranking and sorting of people and reinforces a fixed as opposed to a growth mindset.
Professor Peter.
Yeah, I'm fully supportive of Lynn's responses. I think they're excellent. I would say that if you look at Bloom's taxonomy, which is a way to understand the kinds of intellection that we're asking of our students, the foundation is content and memory, then there's analysis, synthesis, creation, but the highest form of intellection is judgment. And judgment is challenging when the situation is complex. And so I fully support Lynn's comment that we should perhaps move to a portfolio-based method of assessment in which the students demonstrate their ability to judge complex situations, complexity in engineering, complexity in society, complexity in interpersonal and human interactions. Chat GPT can't do this. I would further say that the standardized exams that we've used in the past to assess intellectual capacity or ability, I think have been proven to not correlate well with the outcomes of students in terms of their ability to perform, in terms of their assessment at universities. So I think we really do need to rethink how it is that we assess students for performance. How do we assess them for ability? And I really liked, Lynn, your last comment. We need to use a pedagogy of kindness. At the end of the day, we're human persons. We're not robots. And I will tell you, there is a huge difference. And we need to always keep that in mind. Robots will never be people. People will never be robots. We're mind, body, spirit. We're not robots. And so I think we need to rethink the curriculum and how we assess and how we form people for this very complex society that we live in.
Thanks, Peter. I think the 2 points that are coming out strong is maybe we should move away from our current curriculum, pedagogy, and assessment, and we need to also innovate. Similarly, how we are bringing new innovations like ChatGPT, and that may not be happening, but I think the message is loud and clear that I think it is up to the faculty, the universities now to start thinking how that innovation can begin, both at the institution level, at the faculty level, at even at the industry level. Professor Chang, your comments, please.
Okay, my comment, I think the ChatGPT impact maybe three. Yeah. Since the beginning, like any other mobile or internet service, anytime, anywhere, something character of God, ubiquitous. This is not different from the other internet service, but adding two more. One is through the Bible, the Christianity Bible say after the Babel Tower, scattered, and then language scattered. But ChatGPT making this era of post Babel Tower, making before the Babel Tower, which means computer language start to communicate with the human language, and the English start to communicate with the other language. So automatic translation. So it means many language barriers drastically decrease. So this is one impact. The other one is when we see the wolf or on the mountain. Wolf cannot be my friend because wolf were able to attack me. But based on the order, somebody, wolf, if a wolf follow me very well, it became dog, my pet. So as long as user able to input and control, it means similar like a pet function appear, became a pet. And then, so simply I saying maybe ubiquitous character, and the other one is destroying the barrier of language, not only human language and computer language and any other language making one. And the other one is became like a pet. What I asking, they answer. So it's some character of ChatGPT, why its impact is so stronger than before. But ChatGPT is a ChatGPT AI. It's not human being. Human beings area, another area exists. So if we are caring about the curriculum of education, personally, I think try to know some education, knowing or simple discussion. This kind of education is bad already. To input some knowledge, try to educate is passed away. So now is a real function of education is a targeting for action, because action is a human area. Human only able to carry on responsibility. So any kind of the curriculum, the preparing for post the ChatGPT should be considered for the students' performance or action. Maybe inside there must include some moral judgment as well. So that's some idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chang. Let's move on. I have one or two more interesting questions to ask. During the pandemic, I think many students preferred to go for, internships and placements which were remote. But however, those pandemic-related restrictions on mobility have completely gone now. They don't exist now. But do we as educators, do we think, or should we go on the thought process that remote internships or even remote job opportunities can still become future for the students who are studying at the university? Like, I will give you an interesting report. Why this question is interesting for me. There was a report which was conducted by Kaplan, on Inside Higher Education and College Pulse. And the report came out with very interesting statistics. They interviewed roughly more than 2,000 college students through what is called as a student voice survey. And the report suggested that 38% are somewhat still interested in fully remote internship opportunities during college. 18% are extremely interested, and 34% are somewhat interested, and 15% are least interested, something like that. So there is greater interest among the students for remote internship opportunities. What as educators, should we encourage students to look at remote internship opportunities? I really want to hear your voices. I would first invite Professor Chang now, and then we'll go to Professor Lynn and Professor Peter for remarks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for very much. Very interesting question. First of all, we need to identify what's the difference. Face-to-face internship and then remote internship. We can say maybe distance internship or online internship or internet internship, whatever it is, not facing each other. Okay, I also checking the data. Generally speaking, the satisfaction of internet internship or online internship, remote internship is less than face-to-face internship. So why this thing happened? I wanted to care about some basic human sense, 5 senses we have. But remote means traditional way of remote, online, or only typing, or nowadays only facing the Zoom, including Zoom, but not able to using the other senses. So it means since the beginning, we do not have enough senses, cannot be engaging in some project or work directly, impossible. One more, some important part of missing the remote internship is human relationship. The human relationship is always able to be created based on the foundation, which accidentally or intentionally happening so many affairs, and then able to trust the others, able to making a great teams. This kind of dynamics is not exist. So in the reality, during the pandemic, many students taking an internship is 50-50, something face-to-face and including mixing style. Now, we need to think about two factors. First one, if a remote internship is necessary, then we need to how to increase the sense of human, how to communicate, maximizing the human senses, including maybe Google together. And the other one is maybe impossible to be same compared to the face-to-face internship. So how to mixing it? For example, like as I see, the Oxford University also allowing distance learning PhD course as well. But still distance learning should need to go to the Oxford and need to taking some the thesis evaluation and the research. So it means basically 100% internship, remote internship, maybe as a current condition, maybe forever. It cannot be same as a face-to-face. But it's the matter of how to choosing the another senses and also how to compensate some face-to-face and how to mixing it. That's my answer. Thank you.
Professor Peter.
Oh, yeah. So one of the things we did at my former university, Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago, at the very beginning of the pandemic, is we began to offer fully remote internships to high school students. And the rationale for that was we wanted those students to have project-based learning experiences. We wanted them to have practical skills so that they were very employable for their second internship. And we did this in high school, and it was extremely successful. We literally had thousands of high school students take virtual internships with us. So I do believe that there's a very important place for remote internships. Having said that, many students and many employers want their workers to be in person or hybrid at most. And so we've had no issue really. Of course, we're located in Washington, D.C., which is the heart of the nation, and there are plentiful opportunities here for internships of all kinds. In fact, we're really setting a record right now. We've had over 2,000 active employers in our database and over 30,000 job postings this year alone. So we're at no loss for opportunities, but I can understand if you're in a remote location or if you're in a rural area, it may be more challenging.
Yeah, let me. So I think it's that remoteness of some students that makes this an equity imperative. We saw this remarkable resilience on the part of colleges and universities in responding to the need to pivot to remote and online learning, and then also partnering with associations, businesses, industry to set up online remote internships. I think there is an equity imperative before us to continue offering remote in addition to face-to-face. Thinking about the museums that had to close down, or TV and movie studios that had to shut down during COVID, offered some of these opportunities and greatly diversified people who were working with them in their institutions and organizations. Jeff Salingo in his book, There's Life After College, makes a distinction between students. He categorizes students into 3 different groups. There are sprinters, striders, and stragglers. And the sprinters, those who are most successful 6 months upon graduation, are those who are able to have internship opportunities where they could use those opportunities to create a narrative that would support their future work aspirations. Many of our students have to engage in work that doesn't relate to their career goals. And we need to make sure that these high impact practices that we know will make a difference, including internships and apprenticeships, are accessible to all students to meet this equity mandate. So I think there's definitely room for online learning, and we know, and online internships. And we know at this moment where so many students seem disengaged, that there's an opportunity to actually get people engaged in these high impact practices through technology.
Thank you, Professor Lynn. I think we have a scope for last question, and probably along with this response, you can also give your closing remarks, and then we can go towards our conclusion. I'm waiting for questions from the audience. So as and when, if I get any questions, I would quickly ask them. We could quickly ask 1 or 2 questions at the end of the session. So, if you see the workplace, largely in the last 3 years, which is completely driven by Industry 4.0 in terms of digitization, automation, tech companies and startups were offering significantly high proportion of jobs, to the students. But if you see at the moment, what is happening is we are seeing downbeat on hiring. Both these sectors are absolutely cutting, or going through a mass layoffs. We have seen Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, Alphabet coming and announcing. Similarly, in India, we have seen, edtech companies, like Byju's, Vedantu, consumer services like Ola, e-commerce companies like Udaan, and fintech companies like, Paytm, Rupee, health care companies. They're all going for layoffs, So what do you think, students? Do you think students will get significant opportunities in new age companies, or are we seeing a game changing happening here? It has no longer to do with just tech companies or startups. As I told you, the ability, the productivity gap is also emerging. They're all looking at people who are highly skilled, highly potential, rather than recruiting just numbers. Numbers are not what these companies are looking at. Do you see that shift slowly taking place? And is that the reason why we are seeing this layoffs and adjustment in terms of productivity? I think the students would be very interested to hear on this, because I think a large portion from where you come from and where we come from, the tech companies and startups are dream place of work for many students. I would request Lynn to start, probably Chang, and then Peter.
Thank you. I'm not sure where this shift will lead us, but it reinforces the importance of a broad general education and liberal education that prepares students with the skills necessary to be adaptable and flexible in the face of change, but also to be innovators in their own lives, to have that resilience if they lose a job, to imagine themselves in different roles and to draw on the skills. And that's another reason why the use of portfolios is so important. If you can demonstrate a set of skills over a period of 2 or 4 years, then you can draw on the artifacts, the work that you have done in the past to demonstrate how you can contribute to any association over a period of time. And so I think this is what we need to focus on and recognize that this is a moment of unpredictability with respect to where we should go. We saw the consequences of the Great Resignation, and now people are returning to the companies from which they resigned. So there'll be more change, and the best that we can do is to prepare students to adapt to that change.
Thank you, Professor Lynn. Professor Chang.
Okay, this is a very, very tough question, but simply as a concept, but I should be able to make some conceptual solution first. As we know, proletariat group, there is a very sad group controlled by a bourgeois and controlled by a structured some system, always became a victim. And then now we know the famous term, precariat is dangerous. Precarious, some proletariat. So we know the very dangerous social class. We have some part-time job only, or some platform workers, easy to lose their job. Then well, we need to understand why many kind of part-time job appear because of the so much systems penetrate the previous some industrial structure, and then they do not want to allow many people work there. This is not only some phenomena inside the new age companies like IT companies. As long as some forced industrialization continue, and even traditional companies, they're going to using the more semiconductor, and then they're going to decrease the number of workers as well. And then as an individual, some student, there's some solution. This is as some conceptual solution. Maybe we need to make some student, super student, even under this kind of scattered job opportunity, how to know how to organize and then penetrate the opportunity. So maybe I can say proactive, some proactive proletariat, or proactive, some workers, some real, another strong entrepreneurs, lifestyle of entrepreneur. So I don't believe the new age company, IT company, they're going to allow bigger job. I don't believe. I also don't believe the conglomerate companies, they're going to provide a bigger number of job opportunity. I don't believe. Also, I don't believe this kind of the capitalism system always want to decrease. Then what's the solution for our lovely student? We need to make a super student, like a lifelong, some entrepreneur style of their management, their business they can do. So that's my some philosophy as an educator. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor Chang. From super virus, we have reached super student. So Professor Lynn, your comments, please. Sorry.
I think it's my turn to make a comment here, Padmanabha. But yeah, so I just have two additional things to add to what Lynn and Professor Chang have mentioned, and that is that we're finding it's important for our students to begin to develop relationships with their potential employers earlier. But we're seeing no lack of jobs for our students, even in tech companies. It is true that the mid-level jobs are we're seeing disappear, but entry-level jobs are still there. The second thing I would say is it's important to remind ourselves that the majority of jobs are not provided by large companies. The majority of jobs are by small to medium-sized enterprises and startups. And so one of the things we try to teach our students, our business school offers a very popular course in what we call principled entrepreneurship. And it's really an opportunity for them to understand the startup mentality, the entrepreneurial mindset, and many of our students, I would say approaching a majority of our students now here at our university are taking those courses. And so we find they kind of get it. They know that they have to sell themselves, and there are plentiful opportunities in startups, even in the economy, the slowing economy that we have right now. So I think there's a way to make your way in the world, in this brave new world we're in, but we're trying to help our students do that.
Thanks, Peter. Thank you, Professor Lynn. Thank you so much, Professor Peter. Thank you, Professor Chang. I think we are close to the time zone that was given to us, but there's been significant learning for my own self. I really like what Professor Lynn, Peter, and Chang spoke about. Professor Lynn saying to start mentioning, she was mentioning that the fact that we need to move towards profiling of students, rather than have typical exams deciding how smart a student is, we need to start profiling students. I think that might be the future. I think Professor Peter also was mentioning about the importance of skills, and he responded beautifully on that. And Professor Chang's story of Wolf, I will definitely take it as points to remember as part of this conversation. Again, thank you so much. And I just wanted to call out Jindal Global Center for G20 Studies and International Institute for Higher Education and Capacity Building of JGU for wonderfully putting up this thematic session on placement and internships in a world emerging from pandemic. And I'm sure the viewers have enjoyed listening to really amazing, thought-provoking, conversation that we had. We are going to sign out, but I'm really going to look forward to continue in touch with you guys, and let's answer some questions, in the next World Education Summit. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Good to
much.
be with you.
Thank you very much.
Good to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your teaching too. Bye.